It's 7:42 p.m. Your baby has been fed, changed, burped, rocked and checked for every possible source of discomfort you can think of. And they're screaming, not the hungry cry, not the tired fuss. A full-throated, red-faced, inconsolable scream that started without warning and shows no sign of stopping. You've tried everything in your arsenal. Nothing works. You look at your partner with that specific expression of rising panic that every parent knows. What's wrong? What did we miss? Here's what almost nobody tells you. The answer might be nothing. Absolutely nothing. Between 2 weeks and 5 months of age, most infants enter a phase that developmental pediatricians have been studying for over 50 years. It has a name, though most parents have never heard it. Dr. Ronald G. Barr, one of the world's leading researchers on infant crying, calls it the period of purple crying. Not purple like the colour. Purple is an acronym, and each letter describes something specific about what your baby's brain is doing right now that makes this screaming happen seemingly out of nowhere. The P stands for peak of crying. Your newborn cries a certain amount in those first 2 weeks. Then something changes, the crying increases. It builds week by week until it hits maximum intensity around 2 months of age. Some babies cry for an hour or two per day. Others scream for up to 6 hours. Both are normal, both are documented, both will eventually stop. The U is for unexpected. The screaming starts with no warning. Your baby was calm 30 seconds ago. Now they're not. You retrace everything you did in the last 5 minutes. Fed them? Yes. Diaper? Clean. Temperature? Fine. Clothing tags? Checked. There's no trigger you can identify because there isn't one to find. But here's where it gets deeply strange, and this is the part that breaks most parents mentally. The R stands for resists soothing. You know how to calm your baby. You've done it dozens of times. You have a routine that works, except suddenly it doesn't. The same rocking motion that put them to sleep yesterday does nothing today. The pacifier they love? Rejected? Feeding? They turn away? White noise? Skin-to-skin contact? A warm bath? Nothing. And the worst part is you can see it in their face. They look like they're in pain. The P in purple, pained look on their face. But here's what neuroscience has discovered. They're not actually in physical pain. Their face is contorted because their nervous system is overwhelmed, not because something hurts. So what's actually happening inside that tiny skull? Why would evolution design a system where babies scream for hours with no identifiable cause and no way to stop it? The answer requires understanding something most people get completely wrong about infant brains. The common assumption is that babies are simple. Their brains aren't developed yet, so their behaviors are just reflexes, random noise, biological static. That assumption is backwards. A newborn arrives with approximately 100 billion neurons, the same number you have right now. But those neurons are barely connected to each other. In the first few months of life, the infant brain is building its own architecture in real time, forming up to 1 million new neural connections every single second. This isn't passive development. This is construction at an intensity your adult brain will never experience again. Every sound, every sensation, every flicker of light is being processed by a nervous system that's still learning how to process. There's no filtering yet, no ability to tune out background noise, no capacity to distinguish between important stimuli and irrelevant ones. Everything comes in at full volume. When your baby screams with no trigger, what's actually happening is neurological overload. Their developing nervous system has hit capacity. The frontal cortex, the part of your brain that regulates emotional responses and decides what's worth reacting to, barely exists yet in an infant. It won't be fully functional for years. What babies have instead is the amygdala, the ancient emotional alarm system buried deep in the limbic system. When stimulation exceeds their ability to process it, when their brain can't make sense of the sensory input flooding in, the amygdala does the only thing it knows how to do. It triggers a stress response. Heart rate accelerates. Respiration increases. Stress hormones flood the system. And the baby cries hard. This is why the screaming resists soothing. You're not failing as a parent. You're trying to calm a neurological event that's already in motion, driven by brain regions that don't respond to comfort the way you think they should. But there's something even more unsettling researchers have discovered about what's happening during these episodes. When your baby screams, something activates in your brain too. Studies using animal models have mapped the exact neural pathway. The sound of infant crying travels to a specific region in the parental brain called the posterior intralaminar nucleus of the thalamus. For the first 30 seconds, your brain has inhibitory mechanisms that keep you calm. But if the crying continues past that threshold, those mechanisms break down, signals build up, oxytocin-releasing neurons activate. Your brain is being chemically compelled to respond. This is not a malfunction, this is evolution. For thousands of generations, the babies who cried the loudest, who triggered the strongest parental response, who made it impossible for caregivers to walk away, those were the babies who survived. Your baby isn't broken. Your baby is executing a survival program that's older than language. But that doesn't make it easier to experience, because there's something nobody warns you about regarding what this kind of crying does to the person listening to it. The psychological impact on parents isn't just frustration. It's something far more complex and far more dangerous than most people realize. Researchers studying the effects of inconsolable infant crying on caregivers have documented something that almost never gets discussed openly: chronic exhaustion and overload from persistent alarm responses, sleep deficit compounding night after night, and beneath all of that, feelings most parents are ashamed to admit they're experiencing: failure, diminished self-esteem, powerlessness, depression. A review of 25 published studies found no evidence that maternal depression causes excessive infant crying. But it uncovered something else: a robust association between excessive infant crying and subsequent development of maternal depression. The pattern is clear. Mothers become depressed after exposure to intense, inconsolable crying, not before. The crying creates the depression, not the other way around. And here's what makes this particularly devastating. Almost all affected parents confess to experiencing something that fills them with guilt the moment they feel it. Aggressive feelings toward the infant, powerless rage, impulses that, once acknowledged, trigger even more intense feelings of failure. This is the loop that makes parents vulnerable. The baby cries. You can't stop it. You feel like you're failing. The baby keeps crying. The rage builds, then the guilt, then the exhaustion, then the baby cries again. This is why Dr. Ronald Barr, a developmental pediatrician who spent decades studying infant crying, developed an educational program with a very specific purpose: preventing shaken baby syndrome and abusive head trauma. Because the stress of trying to calm inconsolable crying has caused parents to harm their children. The risk is highest among parents who don't understand what's happening, who think the baby is doing this on purpose, who believe they should be able to make it stop. Shaking a baby causes serious brain damage, often death, and it happens most frequently during a very specific developmental window, the same window when crying peaks, between 2 weeks and 5 months of age. Dr. Barr called this phase the period of purple crying. Not because the baby turns purple, though sometimes their face does flush during intense episodes. Purple is an acronym describing the characteristics parents need to understand. Peak of crying. Unexpected. Resists soothing. Pain-like face. Long-lasting. Evening clustering. Most babies hit their peak around 2 months old. Some cry for an hour or two daily. Others cry up to 6 hours. 5% of babies cry for more than 4 hours in a 24-hour period at 5 to 6 weeks. These aren't outliers. This is the range of normal. The crying starts without warning. No clear reason. It resists every soothing technique you try. The baby's face looks pained, contorted, even though researchers have confirmed they're not experiencing physical pain in most cases. The episodes last for hours, and they tend to cluster in the late afternoon and evening, which is why parents call it the witching hour. Here's what you need to understand. This phase has an end. By 3 to 5 months, it resolves on its own. The baby isn't doing this on purpose. Their brain is developing. Their nervous system is maturing. They will outgrow this, but knowing that doesn't make it easier when you're in hour 3 of screaming and nothing works. So here's what the research says you should do. If you've tried everything and you're getting frustrated, put the baby down in a safe place. Their crib, a bassinet, somewhere they cannot fall or get hurt, and walk away. Not forever. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. Long enough to let your own nervous system reset. This is not abandonment. This is not failure. This is recognizing that you are also a biological system with limits. Your brain can only tolerate so much activation before it stops functioning properly. Stepping away protects both of you. Get someone else to take over if possible. A partner, a family member, a friend. If you're alone, that's okay too. The baby will be fine in their crib for a few minutes while you stand in another room and breathe. The alternative, staying in a state of escalating rage while holding a crying infant, is how tragedies happen. Parents who harm their babies during these episodes almost universally report the same thing afterward. They didn't plan it. They didn't want it. They just reached a breaking point they didn't know existed. Now, I need to tell you when this isn't normal, when you should be concerned, because while most inconsolable crying is developmental, roughly 5 to 10% of cases have an underlying medical cause. If your baby's crying fits the rule of threes, pay attention. More than 3 hours a day, more than 3 days a week, for more than 3 weeks. In an otherwise healthy, well-fed infant, that's the threshold where pediatricians start evaluating for other causes. A study of 56 infants brought to the emergency department for excessive crying found that 61% had serious diagnoses. The history provided clues in only 20% of cases. This means you can't always tell from observation alone. If the crying happens specifically after feeding, if the baby seems tense during feeds, if there's visible reflux or gas that changes with position or dietary adjustment, that's colic, not purple crying. Colic may improve with intervention. Purple crying won't. Trust your instinct. If something feels wrong beyond normal developmental crying, talk to your child's healthcare provider. Better to ask and be reassured than to miss something treatable. But for the vast majority of parents watching this, what you're experiencing is normal. Brutal, exhausting, guilt-inducing, but normal. Your baby's brain is forming 1 million new connections every second. Their nervous system is learning to filter, to regulate, to process the overwhelming amount of input flooding in every moment. They don't have the cortical development to manage it yet, so they cry, and your brain, wired by thousands of generations of evolution, is chemically compelled to respond, even when there's nothing you can do, even when every attempt fails, even when you've been awake for 19 hours and you can't remember the last time you felt human. This is not a design flaw. This is biology doing exactly what it was built to do. Your baby survives because you cannot ignore their distress. You keep trying because your brain won't let you stop. The system works precisely because it's this hard. That doesn't make it fair, but it does make it temporary. 3 months from now, maybe 4, this phase will be over. Your baby will have passed through the peak. The screaming will fade. You'll get longer stretches of sleep. And one day, you'll realize it's been weeks since the last inconsolable episode. The baby who couldn't be soothed will learn to calm themselves. The nervous system will mature. The frontal cortex will start doing its job. And you'll be left with the memory of this period, exhausted and relieved in equal measure, knowing you survived something harder than anyone warned you about. The next time you're standing in a dark room at 2 a.m., holding a screaming baby who won't stop no matter what you try, remember what's actually happening. Their brain is building itself. 1 million connections per second. No filter, no regulation, just raw experience flooding a system that's learning how to process it. The crying isn't a message you failed to decode. It's a neurological event already in motion. And when you feel that rage building, when the guilt starts creeping in because you're thinking things you never imagined you'd think about your own child, know this. That's evolution too. Your brain responding exactly as it was designed to. You're not broken. You're not failing. You're experiencing what every parent in human history has experienced during this window. Put the baby down somewhere safe. Walk away for 5 minutes. Breathe. Let someone else take over if you can. This is not giving up. This is recognizing that you are also a biological system with limits. This phase has an end. Your baby will outgrow it, and you'll survive it. Not because it gets easier, but because it stops. Usually between 3 and 5 months, sometimes sooner, sometimes a bit longer, but it ends. Until then, on the nights when nothing works and the screaming stretches into hour 3, remember that your baby isn't doing this to you. They're doing this because their brain is becoming human, and you're the person helping them get there.